The dust had settled in the courtroom. The cameras had packed up. The headlines had begun to shift. But for those who had lived it, the trauma never left. The country had witnessed a miracle. That justice had prevailed for once. But the Braxton family had witnessed something else. How close America still teetered on the edge of repeating its oldest sins. Now, it was time to reckon not just with what had happened, but what must come next. 2 weeks after the verdict, Marcus returned to his father's study. The mahogany desk sat untouched. His boots still rested by the door. The old vinyl player in the corner, Elijah Braxton's pride and joy, still held the last record he played. Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. And then Marcus found it. A sealed letter, marked in his father's precise handwriting. For Marcus, when I'm gone. His hands shook as he opened it. Son, you've seen what I've seen. You've stood in my shadow long enough to... But you are not me. You are more... I fought my fight, but the war isn't over. If they ever try to silence you, speak louder. If they try to end you, stand taller. And if they ever aim a gun at your dignity, you look them in the eye and let them know you didn't raise your hands because you were afraid. You raised them because you were unbreakable. Marcus folded the letter and placed it in the pocket of his coat. His father's voice was still leading him. Even now, in the months that followed, Marcus and Celeste launched the General Elijah Braxton Legacy Foundation, dedicated to * reforming police training across the country, * supporting families impacted by racially motivated violence, * advocating for mental health services for Black veterans, * creating scholarships for young Black leaders in public service. Within a year, chapters had opened in over 20 cities. Veterans signed up in droves. So did mothers. So did protesters, teachers, students, clergy, and former police officers tired of watching their colleagues disgrace the badge. Though McConnell was behind bars, the ripple effects of his actions were far from over. Several other officers with similar misconduct patterns were suspended or investigated after renewed public pressure. New legislation, modeled after the Braxton Act, was introduced in multiple states. Police academies nationwide began using the Braxton funeral incident as a case study for implicit bias and de-escalation. The footage continued to play in classrooms, town halls, and training centers. A gun raised at grief, a man stepping between hatred and history, a son standing tall. Marcus began to speak publicly, not as a victim, but as a builder. He gave the keynote address at West Point's graduation. He stood at the Lincoln Memorial and delivered a modern-day, I have a dream for the post-George Floyd generation. And in one powerful moment, on the 1-year anniversary of the funeral, Marcus stood at his father's grave, with cameras rolling, and said, "They tried to take me on the day I said goodbye, but I'm still here, and now I carry not just my father's name, but his mission. You can jail a man, but you can't jail justice. And you can kill the lie that says dignity is a threat." He looked at the sky as the F-22 flyover returned, this time organized by veterans, not the government. This time, the sky thundered in remembrance, not rage. Celeste Braxton never returned to their old home. She moved into a smaller apartment in Washington, D.C., where she wrote essays, mentored young women, and walked through life with quiet dignity. In her first and only television interview, she was asked how she found strength. She paused and said, "I buried a husband and nearly buried a son. Strength isn't something you find. It's something you become when you have no other choice." In federal prison, McConnell filed appeal after appeal. All were denied. His cellmate once told a reporter that McConnell woke up screaming some nights, haunted not by guilt, but by the fact that he lost. He never apologized, never admitted wrong. His supporters faded. Even the police union stopped defending him. He died alone in his cell 6 years later of a heart attack. There was no funeral, no flag, no folded triangle of fabric passed to a weeping loved one. Just a man who aimed a gun at greatness and missed. This wasn't just a story about a racist cop. It was a story about what happens when courage stands between injustice and a bullet. It was a story about how a funeral became a front line, how a gun became a confession, and how a son carried his father's legacy not with revenge, but with purpose. In a nation struggling to define justice, dignity, and accountability, the Braxtons reminded America that grief is not weakness, it's power, if you know what to do with it. They aimed at a black son because they feared what he stood for, but what they failed to realize was he wasn't just a target, he was a legacy of man they could never kill.